The NBA just handed referees a secret license to Nerf some of the league's biggest stars, and this leaked internal memo is the proof. On the surface, the league is selling this as a move to clean up the game. The common belief is that the NBA simply wants to eliminate frustrating, unnatural plays that fans hate to watch, making the product more entertaining and free-flowing. But the reality is far more calculated. This isn't the simple rule change. It's a targeted strike against a specific player archetype, using deliberately vague language as a weapon to give the league office plausible deniability, while fundamentally altering how players like Trae Young and James Harden can even play basketball. To understand what's really happening, we need to answer three critical questions. First, what does the specific word-for-word language of this memo actually empower referees to do? Second, how will this new interpretation change the outcome of iconic plays we see every night, like the rip-through or the leg kick? And third, why is the NBA doing this now, and who really stands to gain from sidelining some of its most clever scorers? We've analyzed the memo's text, mapped the timeline of previous rule crackdowns, and broken down the exact plays that are now in the crosshairs to show you the real game being played behind the scenes. So is this new point of emphasis a fair adjustment for game integrity? Or is it a strategic move to penalize a specific style of play the league has decided it no longer likes? The memo, reported by The Athletic on September 19, 2025, focuses on what it calls non-basketball moves. But when you look at who excels at these moves, a clear pattern emerges. This isn't about stopping all foul baiting. It's about targeting the crafty, undersized guards who use intelligence and manipulation of the rulebook to compete with more physically dominant players. Think Trae Young, James Harden, Chris Paul, even Luka Doncic. Their genius lies in exploiting the geometry of the game and the psychology of defenders. The rip-through, for instance, where an offensive player sweeps the ball through a defender's outstretched arm, is a high IQ play. It preys on lazy defense. Trae Young has mastered this to an art form, not because he's trying to cheat, but because at his size, he has to create advantages other players are simply born with. This memo effectively tells a generation of players that their cleverness is no longer welcome. The league would rather see a straightforward dunk than a cerebral play that requires the viewer and the defender to think. The memo disproportionately punishes players who rely on guile over raw power, subtly shifting the balance of the game to favor a more physically homogeneous and arguably less interesting style of basketball. Now for the most critical part of this entire operation. The memo is a masterclass in subjective language, and that vagueness is its most powerful feature. Why is this so much more dangerous than a clear-cut rule change? Because it creates an environment of total uncertainty. The memo instructs officials to identify and ignore contact on plays where a shooter initiates an abrupt, overt, or abnormal launching motion. What precisely is an abnormal motion? There's no definition. It's entirely up to the interpretation of the referee in that split second. One official might see a leg kick as abnormal, another might see it as a natural part of a shooter's landing mechanics. This is by design. If the rule were black and white, the league would be accountable for its impact. But by framing it as a point of emphasis rooted in subjective terms, the league office can distance itself from any controversial no call. They can simply say the referee exercised his judgment. According to the memo's text, officials are now looking for offensive players who veer off their path or initiate contact with the defender who is in a legal guarding position. Again, how much of a veer is too much? If a defender cuts off a path, isn't veering a natural basketball move? By refusing to define these terms, the NBA has given itself the ultimate power, the power to influence outcomes on a play-by-play basis without ever having to publicly justify a concrete rule. It creates a chilling effect where players like Harden and Young will hesitate to use their signature moves, unsure if they'll be rewarded with free throws or ignored entirely. This ambiguity is not a flaw in the memo. It's the entire point. So why push this so aggressively right now? The answer is always lies in money and marketability. The NBA is not just a sport, It's a multi-billion-dollar entertainment product, and its biggest client is its broadcast partners. Lengthy foul reviews, constant trips to the free throw line, and choppy game flow are poison to television ratings. Casual fans, the lifeblood of the league's growth, tune out when the action stops. A study from the 2024 season showed that games with over 50 total free throw attempts had a 7% lower average viewership in the final 5 minutes compared to games with under 35. The league knows this. The non-basketball move crackdown is a direct response to this data. It's a strategic decision to prioritize pace and action over the nuance of officiating. The goal is to create a more streamlined, easily digestible product for a mass audience. Furthermore, there's a PR angle. For years, social media has been flooded with complaints about grifters and foul baiters. By publicly taking a stand against these plays, the NBA positions itself as a listener, responsive to the will of the fans. It's a calculated move to control the narrative, making the league look like the guardian of pure basketball while simultaneously optimizing its product for broadcast. It's not about fairness. It's about protecting the bottom line by eliminating anything that makes the game less palatable to the widest possible audience. This isn't the first time the league has gone down this road. To truly understand the league's long-term strategy, we have to look back at the precedent set in 2017 with the original Harden rule. Before that season, the NBA issued a similar point of emphasis targeting shooters who drew fouls on non-basketball moves, specifically Harden's then signature rip-through when he gathered the ball on a drive. Officials were instructed to call it a non-shooting foul, or in some cases, no foul at all. For a while, it worked. Harden's free throw attempts dipped slightly at the start of the season, but elite players adapt. Harden evolved, developing his legendary step-back three, where he would often kick a leg out to create contact. The league stumped out one fire, and Harden started another. This history is crucial because it proves two things. First, the league has a long-standing agenda to legislate these types of plays out of existence. This new memo isn't a reaction to a new problem. It's the next phase of an ongoing war. And second, it shows that players at the top of their game will always find the next loophole. The league changes the rules, and the players change their geometry. The 2017 crackdown didn't end foul baiting. It just forced its evolution. This new memo will do the same. It's a temporary dam, not a permanent solution in the endless cat-and-mouse game between offensive innovators in the league office. While fans and players debate the fairness of this memo, the group caught directly in the middle are the referees. This new directive makes an already impossible job even harder. An NBA official has to process an incredible amount of information in a fraction of a second. Was the defender in legal guarding position? Was the contact marginal? Did the shooter travel? Now, on top of all that, they must make a real-time judgment call on the shooter's intent. Was that leg kick abnormal, or was he just trying to keep his balance? Did he veer off his path to initiate contact, or was he avoiding a charge? These aren't objective questions. According to a retired official we spoke with, this kind of subjective rulemaking is a nightmare for consistency. The pressure from the league is to call the game a certain way, but the pressure from the game itself is to call what you see. When those two things are in conflict, controversy is inevitable. A no call in the final seconds of a playoff game based on one ref's interpretation of an abnormal motion will create a firestorm. The league is effectively downloading the responsibility for this controversial policy onto its officials, arming them with vague guidelines that provide little cover when they are inevitably criticized by fans, coaches, and players for a game-deciding call or no call. So, what happens next? Do Trae Young and James Harden's numbers fall off a cliff? Not likely. The truly elite players will adapt. The memo has closed one avenue for drawing fouls, so they will innovate and find another. We might see Trae Young master a new kind of hesitation dribble to get defenders off balance without initiating the contact himself. Perhaps he'll use his body more like a traditional post-up player, sealing off defenders before the shot, a move that is much harder to legislate away. For Harden, this might accelerate his transition into more of a pure playmaker, using the threat of his scoring to create even more open looks for his teammates. These players reach the top of the league because of their obsessive work ethic and basketball supercomputers for brains. A Memo won't change that. They'll spend the entire offseason in film rooms and gyms with their trainers, workshopping new movements that fall just outside the league's new, vaguely defined parameters. The game will evolve. A new kind of unusual move will emerge in a few years, and fans will complain, and the league will issue another memo. This isn't the end of foul baiting. It's simply the beginning of its next chapter. The NBA can change the rulebook, but it can't outlaw intelligence. In the end, this leaked memo does far more than just clarify a point of emphasis. It exposes the NBA's core tension, the battle between preserving the purity of the sport and maximizing the profitability of the entertainment product. By targeting a specific archetype of player with deliberately subjective language, the league is shaping the future of the game to fit its commercial interests, prioritizing a faster, simpler, and more broadly appealing style of basketball.